Chapter 1. The Forsaken. In this world, there existed the concept of levels. All living creatures started at level 1 and leveled up by collecting spheres, earned by defeating the monsters that ran rampant through the land. However, these monsters were incredibly dangerous, and not just anyone could defeat them. People capable of taking down monsters were called adventurers, men and women who wielded powerful attack skills. Skills were unique, special gifts from the gods awarded at the time of one's birth. Everybody had at least one, and they lived by the use of its power. Thus, those with strong skills were those chosen by the gods. That was what my dad taught me before he died. My skill was gluttony. As a skill, it was nothing but a problem, because all it meant was that I was eternally hungry. In the village where I was born, they called me a deadbeat and bullied me because of it. In this world, I was unnecessary. I was one of the forsaken. My dad had been my protector, but when illness took him, the village drove me out on account of my useless skill. I ended up in the kingdom of Seafort. At the time, my heart was full of hope. I was certain there'd be something I could do in a city so big. But I couldn't find a decent job, so I ended up working for daily wages as a castle gatekeeper. It was grueling work standing guard through rain, wind, and snow. On top of that, the pay was abysmal. Truthfully, gatekeeping wasn't the work of commoners, it was supposed to be carried out by the kingdom's holy knights. However, because gatekeeping was considered 3D, dirty, difficult, and dangerous, high-ranking knights often hired day laborers to work in their stead.
Hey, gatekeeper. You better not be slacking off on your shift, you hear me?
The young trio of holy knights grinned, striding toward me in their glorious armor. They were the 3 siblings of Vlarik, one of Seafort's 5 esteemed families. They were also my bosses. The one who spoke to me was Raffaele, the eldest. The tall figure to his right was his younger brother, Hado. Behind them was Memel, their sister and the youngest of the 3. Each was an outstanding holy knight in their own right, and the sight of their purple-haired heads sent chills everywhere they went. Among adventurers, holy knights were masters of special skills imbued with holy attributes. Moreover, the title of Holy Knight was an honor bestowed upon only those of the highest status. With their powerful skills, blessed by divinity, holy knights could fight the strongest monsters and reach the highest levels. In this world, when the powerful rose in level, their status and renown rose as well. Compared to peasants like myself, holy knights were on an entirely different plane of existence. This meant that angering them was inevitably dangerous. "Yes, Lord Raffaele Vlarik," I said. Raffaele disgusted me. I couldn't stand him. I knelt and bowed before him all the same.
"Here's your daily wages."
Raffaele tossed a few copper coins at my feet. His siblings chuckled at the display of power.
"Well, better hurry,"
he said.
"I don't pay full rates to the lazy, you know."
He knew as well as I did, these wages were my life. I scurried to pick up the coins, but as I reached for the last one, Raffaele stepped on my hand.
"Oh, I'm sorry. Is that a hand? It's so filthy, I couldn't tell."
He bellowed with laughter as he crushed my hand beneath his foot. "Oh, yes, so unintentional."
"Don't forget,"
Raffaele continued,
"that useless cretins like you work because of us. You are replaceable. Do you understand? Or is the concept too difficult for a half-wit to fully comprehend?"
"That's right,"
Hado said to me.
"You're slacking off. Gatekeeping is a job of great honor that you're doing by our blessing. It used to be a volunteer position, but we're paying you out of the goodness of our hearts. So show those copper coins more respect, gatekeeper."
"It really is just as my brothers say, you know,"
said Memel.
"Your mistakes become our problems. If you make a single one, we won't let you off lightly."
This was their idea of education. They crushed me into place. They drilled my status into the very marrow of my bones, I was the tiniest and weakest of living creatures, and because of the Vleriks, I was allowed to keep living. Until I agreed with that, I wouldn't be permitted to pick up the last coin. If I fought back, I could say goodbye to gatekeeping. And if they even thought I was resisting, it might be goodbye to life, too. These master-slave conversations had gone on for more than 5 years. But if I tried to quit, Raffaele and his siblings would go crazy with rage. They'd find some groundless accusation to pin on me. That was who they were. I was full of an anger that had grown and simmered within me over 5 years. Being forced to obey enraged me, and I resented the powerlessness that left me unable to do anything but listen. Just then, my gluttony awakened and let forth a rumble from my stomach. A menacing look crossed Raffaele's face, and he began berating me.
You wretched, loathsome mealworm. You're not even worthy of a gatekeeping position. Are you trying to tell me we don't give you enough to eat? Are you trying to cast shame upon the great Vlerik family?
With that, Raffaele kicked me in the stomach. Not using his full power, but it was still the kick of a holy knight. The difference between Raffaele's stats and mine was like the difference between the sun and a guttering candle. The shock felt as if the kick had forced my insides out. I writhed on the ground, heaving up my guts as I struggled to catch my breath. In the pulsing, dizzying blur of my wavering consciousness, a voice I recognized as Memmel's drifted to my ears.
Ew, how disgusting. He's like a maggot.
On your feet, gatekeeper. If you can't do your job, you'll make us look bad in front of the other holy knights.
Raffaele placed his foot on my head.
I said, on your feet.
But it was impossible. The difference in our strength was too overwhelming. I couldn't stand until Raffaele lifted his foot. He knew that too, and he clearly enjoyed watching me struggle under his weight. He leaned down further. My head felt like it would split from the pain.
Raphael, stop that immediately. You'll kill him. He's one of the people you are supposed to protect. Such behavior is unbecoming of a holy knight.
Raffaele grunted.
Roxy Hart. So you're next on duty today.
Roxy Hart was different from the other holy knights. She believed in protecting the weak from those who abused their strength, and her golden hair flapping in the wind was the very image of courage and valor. She had just saved me. The Harts were another of Seafort's 5 esteemed families. They were well known for upholding the values of honesty and justice. For that reason, the public adored Lady Roxy, and naturally I was among her many devotees. As Lady Roxy glared in their direction, Raffaele, Hato, and Memmel threw curses and left. But as they did, Raffaele looked back at Lady Roxy with a defiant grin. I knew that look, and I knew that face. It was spiteful and vindictive. Raffaele was no doubt already considering how to get his revenge for this humiliation. Roxy paid Raffaele no mind. Instead, she took my hand, helped me to my feet, and wiped my bloodied forehead with her handkerchief.
Are you all right?
Yes, I said. It's always like this. Thank you for helping me, Lady Roxy.
No need for thanks. We're both gatekeepers. This is the least I can do. Anyway, your shift is over. I'll take it from here.
I bowed deeply and passed Roxy my spear. It was adorned with a flag, upon which the royal family's coat of arms was embroidered. This spear was the sign of the gatekeeper. Roxy took it with due gravitas. She treated even 3D duties like this with respect and honor. It made her different from the other holy knights. It was this Roxy who took my hand in hers and spoke with a worried look.
If anything like this happens again,
No, I can't cause you any further trouble. I'll be fine. Thank you. Lady Roxy still wanted to say something, but I left before she could. I didn't want her getting involved with the Vlerik family any more than she already was. There was no telling what underhanded tactics they'd use to get to her, and just imagining it sent me into a spiral of despair. I wanted Lady Roxy to forge ahead on her own path. I knew that whatever she ended up doing, it would be for the benefit of the people. I headed off to the local tavern to drown my sorrows. The moon was high in the sky by the time I arrived. Late nights were busy times for taverns. All manner of people, from merchants and travelers to harlots and the like, sat drinking until their faces went red. I took my usual spot at the counter, where the barkeep poured my usual wine without my saying a word. It was the cheapest wine available and horribly acidic. Its sole purpose was getting one drunk enough to forget one's sorry lot. Bread and soup, barkeep.
You got it.
My dinner was hard rye bread that had been left out for too long, and tasteless soup made with vegetables left over from other dishes. I hadn't tasted meat in at least 5 years, and the last time I'd done so, it was a sliver of jerky. I couldn't even remember the aroma. Though my gluttony skill meant I was always hungry, I didn't have the money to satisfy my cravings. The best I could do was put off the hunger pangs by eating my food as slowly as possible. While I nibbled my bread and sipped my wine, the barkeep came over.
How's the gatekeeping going?
It's rough.
I see. Well, I'll be praying that you don't end up like the guy before you.
I didn't reply. It was said that the gatekeeper the Vlarik family hired before I started had died of overwork. He hadn't been too different from me, just another guy with barely a skill to his name. Over those relentless, punishing gatekeeping shifts, he became skinny and weak, and one day he simply collapsed and died like a puppet whose strings were cut. The guy had died still doing his duty. But when the Vlariks found him, they trod all over his corpse and called him useless. The barkeep said he'd seen it with his own eyes. He said that, even now, he couldn't forget that tragic sight. It was burned into the very meat of his mind. So what's going to happen to me? I wondered. If Roxy hadn't stepped in while Rafaeli educated me, I might have ended up as just another version of that awful story. I'd survived the day, but at this rate, my future didn't look as though it would be a long one. Chapter 2. From the darkness comes gluttony. Pleasantly tipsy off my glass of wine, I decided to check on Lady Roxy before heading back to the hovel I called home. After the incident with Rafaeli earlier, I was worried about her. Rafaeli was as sly as they came, but I didn't think he would lash out right away. Still, I couldn't get his cunning smile out of my head. I knew a weakling like me would be no help to Lady Roxy if anything happened, but I could at least provide her with a human shield. I followed the moonlit roads to a point from which I could see the castle gate. Lady Roxy stood resolute at her post. I heaved a great sigh of relief. I had worried over nothing, it seemed. My soul at ease, I wished her good luck from the bottom of my heart. As I made to leave, I spied a flock of shadows scrambling up the eastern castle wall. That area was a blind spot for anyone on guard duty, and it was only by coincidence that I spotted it from where I stood. Bandits. It had to be. I could think of no one else who would climb the walls to enter the castle in the middle of the night. I rushed down the street toward Lady Roxy. Lady Roxy. Trouble.
What's wrong? Shouldn't you be at home?
I went for a walk to clear my head. There's a group of people scaling the east wall.
Are you certain?
Yes. I saw it with my own eyes. I wasn't sure Lady Roxy would believe me, but she looked me in the face and said,
I trust you. I'm heading over there now. Will you look after the gate while I'm gone?
Yes, of course. She passed me the gatekeeper's spear. Good luck, Lady Roxy, I said.
Leave it to me.
Lady Roxy unsheathed a silver sword from her belt.
As long as I have this with me, I'll be fine.
She sped off toward the eastern wall. Instantly, she disappeared into the darkness. Wow, those holy knights are fast. Then I heard the screams of the men inside. It was easy to imagine quick, gallant Lady Roxy cutting the bandits down one after another. Judging by their screams, the bandits had come in significant numbers. There were definitely more than 2 or 3. Still, Lady Roxy was a holy knight. A group of lowly bandits couldn't catch her off guard. Sure enough, the sounds of battle soon faded into silence. Just when I thought it was over, a lone man staggered out of the darkness toward me. As he drew closer, the moonlight brought his features into sharp relief. My breath caught in my throat at the sight of him. The bandit's right arm had been cut off, and as he stumbled toward the gate where I stood, he tried desperately to stop the bleeding with his left hand. His face was pale, sickeningly white from blood loss. I gripped my spear. I wouldn't let him get away. It didn't matter that he was a dying human being. He was a thief, a violent criminal, and he needed to be stopped. If he escaped while I was covering for Lady Roxy, the blame would ultimately fall on her shoulders. I couldn't let that happen. I had to kill him. He's wounded, I thought. Even someone as weak as me should be able to handle this. Gritting my teeth, I thrust my spear with everything I had. It pierced the bandit's heart. He gripped the spear with a wild, intense glare, then fell on his back in a horrific spray of blood. His arms and legs spasmed for a time, until finally his body stopped moving. There was no mistaking it. The bandit was dead. I did it. I killed him. I felt something flow into my body, followed by the echo of a metallic voice in my head.
Gluttony skill activated. Stats increased, vitality plus 120, strength plus 150, magic plus 100, spirits plus 100, agility plus 130. Skills added, identify, telepathy.
Stats increased. Skills added. What's this voice? What's going on? Then the most wonderful, glorious sensation, that of an eternally empty stomach truly filling for the first time. I'd never felt so satisfied in my life. While I was lost to this ecstasy, Lady Roxy returned to the gate. She took my hand and looked me over, checking for injuries.
Are you okay? Are you hurt? Is he all right? He looks pale. Oh, I'm so worried.
What was that? I could hear Lady Roxy's voice in my head. She wasn't speaking, but somehow, her words swam into me.
What's wrong?
She asked. No, it's nothing, I said. I'm fine.
He's fine. Thank the gods he's okay.
Lady Roxy's relief echoed through me again. When she released my hand, her voice faded. Were those her thoughts? Was I reading her mind? Stranger things had happened, hadn't they? Perhaps this was an aftereffect of the shock of battle. Perhaps I was simply imagining her voice. It wasn't as though I could just go touching Lady Roxy again to make sure. She was a holy knight, after all. In any case, holy knights were phenomenal. In total, 10 bandits had broken into the castle, and Lady Roxy took them all on by herself. I had taken care of the last straggler, but only because Lady Roxy left him pretty much at death's door. The castle was safe, all thanks to her. Lady Roxy, please, I said. I can't take any credit for what happened here.
Oh, but you must. You defeated one of the bandits, too.
I had a reason for avoiding official involvement, Raffaele and his siblings. If they discovered that I'd helped another holy knight while I was meant to be on duty in service to their house, they'd go berserk. I had no idea what they'd do to me, but given how Raffaele felt about Lady Roxy, I was certain I'd be in for an even harsher education session. If Lord Raffaele hears about this, I said, it's not going to be good for me.
Ah, I see. Very well. I'll do as you suggest.
Thank you.
No, please, I should be thanking you. If you hadn't told me about those bandits, I would have been the laughingstock of the Holy Knights.
It seemed there were power struggles even among the highest echelons. But, being of such low status, I had no way of knowing how demanding those struggles were.
Then you must let me show my gratitude,
Lady Roxy said. No, no. I couldn't let a holy knight do such a thing. Lady Roxy wasn't a fan of my dogged modesty, and her cheeks puffed up into a pout. It surprised me. She usually never let her chivalrous mien drop. I felt as though I'd grown just a touch closer to her.
Ah, I've got it.
Lady Roxy clapped her hands, though the gesture felt somewhat forced. My heart pounded. I knew she intended to reward me, whether I liked it or not, but I didn't know what was coming. I never could have imagined what she said next.
Would you consider working for the Hart family? If I told my father about what happened here, I'm certain he would agree to hire you.
What? But, I don't even have any skills, and I'm not worthy.
That isn't true at all. Did you not just now defeat a bandit by your own hand?
That had been little more than dumb luck. If I were made to do it again, I would certainly fail. But I, frustrated by my indecisiveness, Lady Roxy spelled it out.
If you're worried about the Vlerick family, allow me to take care of them. Or do you intend to work under them for the rest of your life?
She saw right through me. She knew I was concerned about what the Vlerick family might do to enjoy themselves at my expense. Even then, she still wanted to hire me. I could have cried. In front of me lay two paths, a future in which Raffaele and his siblings used and discarded me, and I died of overwork, and beside that, a brighter life, a brighter future, under the kind and beautiful Lady Roxy. I didn't need to think twice. I was already one of Lady Roxy's devotees. This was like a dream come true. Lady Roxy, I said, I accept your offer.
Excellent. Well, it's late, so you should go home. Come to Hart Manor at noon the day after tomorrow. I'll be waiting.
I was so happy, I could have exploded, but I held it in. I bowed over and over with gratitude until finally I headed home. When I was far enough away that the castle gate was no longer visible, I jumped for joy. Luck had finally turned my way. I felt as if I were floating. It was all too good to be true. I bounded home to prepare for the day after tomorrow. Chapter 3. Skill Study. Upon returning home, I soaked an old rag in water to wash my body. I hoped that would be enough to clean me up for going to Hart Manor in 2 days' time. Then I lit a precious candle to examine myself in my fractured mirror. Nothing much had changed. My clothes were still a patchwork mess, and washing myself wasn't going to change that, so I gave up. I rolled onto the bundle of straw I called a bed, stared up at the ceiling stains left by leaking water, and reflected on what I'd just been through. The day had started with Raffaele's brutal notion of self-improvement. But that very night, I'd fought bandits with Lady Roxy, and now there was even a chance I could start working for the Hart family. It was like a dream. Then I remembered the metallic voice I'd heard after killing that bandit. It said my stats had increased. It also told me I got new skills, Identify and Telepathy. Laughable. Identify was a rare skill. It gave its user detailed information about things that existed in the world. If I'd really acquired it, it would make my life a whole lot easier. Haha. I muttered the word identify, and, against all my expectations, the following information appeared in the air over my head.
Fake Graphite, Level 1. Vitality, 121. Strength, 151. Magic, 101. Spirit, 101. Agility, 131. Skills, Gluttony, Identify, Telepathy.
Whoa. What the hell? I exclaimed. Okay, Fate, calm down. I checked my stats first. They had always been a clean sweep of ones across the board, but now they were all triple digit. With these stats, I could fight low-level monsters. Next, skills. I used to have Gluttony and only Gluttony, but now I had Identify and Telepathy, too. This is unbelievable. But the fact that I could check my own stats and skills was proof in itself. I now possessed Identify. Wait. If I had Identify, I could quit gatekeeping and become an appraiser. They made good money, because their skills were highly specialized. What on earth is going on here? Alright, calm down, Fate. Be practical. I used identify to more closely examine my other skills.
Telepathy, read the thoughts of those you come in contact with.
I had experienced this skill already, when Lady Roxy held my hand. I heard her thoughts because the skill had activated. But why was this happening? I racked my brain for an explanation and finally arrived at an answer. It lay in the words the metallic voice had spoken.
Gluttony skill activated.
Whatever was going on was a result of the gluttony skill, which I'd long thought to be completely useless. But now I could use identify to examine gluttony.
Gluttony, you are eternally hungry.
Well, that much I already knew. It was exactly what the appraiser had said when they visited my village during my childhood. This meant the gluttony skill contained a hidden, unidentifiable power. As far as I could tell, that power was the ability to devour the essence, the soul, of what I killed, thereby stealing their stats and skills. As a side effect, my empty stomach filled. I had the potential to grow exponentially stronger, depending on how I used gluttony from here on out. But I wasn't about to just start murdering people either. What to do? The answer was simple: monsters roamed the wilds just outside the kingdom of Seafort. If I killed them, I could take their skills and stats. With my stats where they were now, I stood a good chance of defeating low-level monsters. I could make a new start as an adventurer. Then, one day, I would be stronger than a holy knight. When that happened, Raffaele and the Vlarik family would have to crane their necks to look up and see what I had become. Just thinking about it made me want to dash out of my hovel and start monster hunting. But it was too dangerous to go after dark, even for someone of my new stats, so I decided to get a good night's sleep and head out in the morning. Actually, I was supposed to gatekeep for Raffaele early the next morning. But you know what? I wasn't going to go. I would take Vlarik orders no longer. I had a new boss, and her name was Lady Roxy. If the meeting with her father 2 days from now went well, he'd hire me. An honest, decent life awaited me. For now, I'd focus on tomorrow, get equipped, go monster hunting, and grow stronger. I closed my eyes, and my consciousness quickly faded. I woke to the sound of cawing birds. I fixed my bedhead in my broken mirror, brushed my teeth with a tree sprig, and dressed. Then I took a small leather pouch from where I'd hidden it in a crack in the wall. In the pouch were my life savings, 2 silver coins, painstakingly earned over 5 years. A silver coin was equivalent to 100 copper coins, and 100 silver coins converted to a gold coin. I'd never even touched one of those. Others might have laughed at my 2 silver coins, but I'd gone through multiple hells to earn that money. It was my getaway savings, for the day when Raffaele was done with me and I feared for my life. But that worry was gone, at least for now. Instead, I would use this money to invest in monster hunting equipment. With my 2 coins in hand, I bounded out the door. The kingdom of Seafort consisted of 4 districts. The castle sat in its center, and around the castle were districts to the north, east, south, and west. The Holy Knights training grounds were located in the northern military district, and special weapons and armor were developed there. The kingdom's high-ranking Holy Knights lived in the Holy Knight district to the east. The southern merchant district was packed with stalls and shops selling all manner of goods, including weapons, daily necessities, and food. The western residential district was where the common folk like myself resided. From the allocation of the districts, one could see how well the Holy Knights were treated. Their business took up a full half of the city. I headed to the kingdom's busiest, most bustling district, the merchant district. I pushed past the residential district's crowds and into the merchant district, which was lined with red brick buildings. From there, I slipped into a back alley filled with stalls and ringing with spirited voices calling to passers-by. This was the other side of the merchant district. I'd come here because I only had 2 silver coins. I'd be lucky to get my hands on a worn-out second-hand weapon. With what I was wearing, I didn't stand a chance of getting into an establishment for high-grade weapons. In other words, I'd come to the marketplace for everything people didn't want anymore. I was searching the stalls selling second-hand weapons when a chubby middle-aged man called out to me. He threw me a friendly smile and seemed kind enough.
Are you looking for a weapon, my friend?
Yes. How'd you know?
I've been doing this a long time, and I watched you work your way down the road. You don't have eyes for anything but weapons.
I was a little taken aback. He was spot on. This salesman was a smooth one.
Well, won't you take a look at my selection?
Numerous weapons, the most I'd seen so far, were laid out along his table.
And what's your budget today, my friend?
I told the merchant of my 2 silver coins, and his friendly attitude melted away. Not a sliver of his earlier kindness remained. There were only his hard eyes looking down on me, like those of Raffaele and his siblings.
I knew it,
he said.
That's another one of the poor. I can't believe I even tried. With 2 silver coins, you can buy any of the scrap from that corner. That trash should suit you just fine.
He knew I didn't have the money to purchase a serious weapon. But even if I got mad, and even if I stormed off in a rage, it would be no different at any other stall. My best options were still here, where I at least had an abundance of junk to choose from. I took each of the old weapons in hand and analyzed them with Identify. They were all right on the brink of their durability levels. A few swings, and they'd shatter. Lost in despair, I rummaged through the weapons until I found an old black sword. As I laid my hand upon it, a voice flowed into me.
Buy me, you will not regret it.
It was a husky male voice, speaking through my telepathy. Chapter 4. The Greed of the Black Sword. Whoa! This sword talked. I dropped the sword to the ground, dumbfounded by its sudden comment. The merchant and nearby customers narrowed their eyes and glared at me. Their gazes said it all. What the hell are you doing? If you're not going to buy something, scram. But I was far from caring about any of them. It talks. The sword talks. What is this? I'd never heard of a sword with a personality, a soul. I analyzed it with Identify.
Greed. Type, one-handed sword.
What? That's it? Identifying other weapons showed me information like durability and attack stats, but for the black sword, all I could see were its name and type. I carefully examined the mysterious blade. It was filthy, caked in oil and dust. Honestly, it was just like me, especially in the way it was regarded as trash. When I thought of it like that, I felt a kind of affinity for the sword. And I'd definitely heard a voice.
Buy me,
he'd said. There was an arrogance to his tone, but I didn't sense bad intentions. And if the sword was going to do something troubling to me when I touched it, it would have done so already. I didn't see any immediate risk in handling it again, so I gripped it decisively.
I thought you'd run away. Mike, you are an interesting one. So what's it going to be? Will you buy me?
I took a last glance at the other old weapons. The only worthwhile blade among them was this black sword, Greed. A sword that could speak. I could make that work. We're not too different, you and I said. Consider yourself sold.
Is that so? Well, pay the fat man his money. Looking at his face makes me sick.
I took Greed to the merchant, who was talking to another customer, and I placed my 2 silver coins on the counter. The merchant's eyes flickered toward the coins. Then he shooed me away like I was a mangy stray. Horrible, right to the end. I left the stall, and I would not be back again. I took a rag from my pocket to wipe down the newly purchased Greed. However, the blade's oily residue was stubborn, and it wouldn't come off. If I'd had some soap. But I no longer had the money. I'm counting on you, Greed.
Our meeting is fortuitous,
said Greed.
Or is it fate, I wonder? What is your name?
Come to think of it, I still hadn't introduced myself. I'm Fate Graphite.
Fate indeed. I will not forget it. Well, what now?
I had known the answer to that question since last night. I just got a weapon. What do you think?
Hunting?
That's right. Monster hunting. With my new partner Greed by my side, I headed from the merchant district straight to Seafort's southern gate. That gate was much larger than those of the other districts. A great deal of cargo and produce passed through it to the merchant district, and it was wide enough for 10 caravans to roll through simultaneously side by side. Not far from the southern gate was a territory called the Goblin Grasslands. Numerous goblins called it home, and spent their days attacking passing caravans to steal food. As far as monsters went, goblins were the bottom of the barrel, which made them perfect for rookie adventurers. There was one thing you had to be careful of when it came to goblins. They liked to attack from tall grass. Sometimes people chased one goblin down only to find themselves surrounded by others that had been hiding. That was a death sentence. This tactic was so well known, it was a proverb. A goblin in the open means 100 in hiding. I'd heard all this from an old adventurer who sometimes forced me to drink with him at the local bar. I never imagined his advice would ever actually be relevant to my life. My path to becoming an adventurer would begin with a goblin hunt. Thanks to the stats I'd earned from the bandit I killed, would be able to slay a goblin, devour its soul, and make its power mine, too. Weaving between caravans, I made my way to the gate, where I found a sizable crowd of adventurers. Men and women alike were equipped with armor and weapons. I'd stumbled on a meeting place for adventurers, all of them looking to join impromptu hunting parties. A hunting party. That sounded nice. I had always been alone in my village. The only time I wasn't by myself was when I was bullied. Even since arriving in Seafort, Raffaele had worked me so hard I never had the chance to make any friends. Hunting parties were like the groups of heroes my father had told me about in his old stories. Fighting side by side, cheering each other up in the hard times and shedding tears together in the sad. As a young boy, listening to those stories always brought enraptured light to my eyes. Friends, I said without thinking. That sounds nice.
You've got me,
said Greed. Yeah. Yeah, I do. However, greed was an object. What I wanted were bonds with real, living people. The difference felt pretty stark. So I took a deep breath, plucked up my courage, and walked into the crowd of adventurers. It's okay. I'm no longer one of the Forsaken, I thought. After all, now I knew the truth about gluttony. With that, I could make a monster's power my own. Surely I belonged here in this circle of brave fighters. Surely a group would accept me. Right as I thought that, an adventurer about my age approached me.
That sword's telling me you're ready for a goblin hunt. How about it? Wanna team up?
Would that be okay? I was so happy I could have burst. I barely knew what it meant to be needed by another person. Merely being asked made me happy beyond belief. I was helpful, useful.
Well, you see, my usual hunting partner can't make it today, so I'm stuck. What level are you, anyway?
Level 1. The young adventurer flinched. He scratched his head and said he'd just remembered some errands he had to get to, at which point he slowly backed away and skittered off. I was left with a strange, awkward emptiness.
Fate,
Greed said.
Give it up. Well, you're level 1, everyone will be like him. Would you want to go into a life or death battle with someone you thought wouldn't have your back?
My breath caught in my throat. I'd thought I was strong because I'd gone from all ones across the board to stats in triple digits. But really, I was just starting out. I was so used to being treated like trash that, for a moment there, I'd lost touch with what normal even meant. I had my head in the clouds, didn't I?
Indeed. And in any case, gluttony isn't a skill you should be showing to other people. That is as much as I can say.
How do you know about my gluttony? I hadn't said anything about it, yet somehow, he knew. Greed let out a sly chuckle.
Because we truly aren't so different, you and I. In time, you will understand, whether you like it or not.
With that pompous little riddle, Greed fell into silence. I still had questions, but for now, I suspected he was right. Things might break bad if other adventurers learned about my unique power. If it became known that I devoured the skills of those I killed, some adventurers might start worrying I would try to take theirs. It wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility for people like that to want to preemptively kill me. They'd want to get me while I was still weak. This was exactly the way a person like Raffaele would think, and he couldn't be the only one of his foul kind. Putting my own safety first meant hunting alone, just me and Greed, until I became so powerful nobody could touch me. We would start with goblins. Chapter 5. Eat all the things. I hid in the grass at the edge of the goblin grasslands. Just a short distance away squatted a goblin, yawning. The green-skinned monster stood about as high as my waist, and its tattered clothes looked stolen. The goblin hadn't noticed me. Its guard was down. I scanned the immediate area, but the monster seemed alone. Holding my breath, I circled toward the goblin's blind spot, where I used Identify.
Goblin Fighter, Level 3. Vitality, 30. Strength, 40. Magic, 10. Spirit, 10. Agility, 30. Skills, Strength Boost, Low.
A goblin fighter. It seemed goblins came in a few different classes. This one's stats were much lower than mine. Next, I used Identify on the goblin's skill.
Strength Boost, Low, slightly increases the power of physical attacks.
The skill was a stat boost, then. If this strength boost was low, that meant there were probably medium and high versions, too. I needed to start grabbing useful skills wherever I could. The goblin finally lost out to sleepiness and drifted into slumber. This was my chance. I leapt out from the grass and dashed to close in on the goblin. It awoke to the sound of my furious footsteps and turned to face me, but it was too late. The black sword Greed cleaved a smooth arc through the air, severing the goblin's head from its shoulders. The goblin died before it even had a chance to cry out, let alone fight back. As it died, a familiar metallic voice echoed in my head.
Gluttony skill activated. Stats increased, Vitality plus 30, Strength plus 40, Magic plus 10, Spirit plus 10, Agility plus 30. Skill added, Strength Boost, Low.
Yes. Just to be sure, I used Identify to analyze my stats again.
Fake Graphite, Level 1. Vitality, 151. Strength, 191. Magic, 111. Spirit, 111. Agility, 161. Skills, Gluttony, Identify, Telepathy, Strength Boost, Low.
My stats were rising. I was getting stronger. Greed chuckled as I stood there, lost in joy as I gazed at my stats and skills.
Overreacting a little for a measly goblin, don't you think? If we have to do a victory dance every time you kill such a wretch, we won't get anything done.
Give me a break, would you? I just killed my first monster. Maybe a measly goblin didn't mean anything to the other adventurers, but until yesterday, I'd lived in honest fear of all these beasts. I felt an indescribable new freedom now that the tables had turned. I cut off the goblin's ears as proof I'd slain it. The kingdom rewarded anyone who helped keep the monster population down. You exchanged proof for money at the designated trading post. One pair of goblin ears was worth 10 copper coins, which was more than my daily gatekeeping wages. Adventuring was dangerous, but the money was great. I tucked the goblin ears in a burlap bag I'd brought with me. It was time for the next target. I cautiously continued through the field until I found 2 goblins in a clearing. I could tell one of them was a goblin fighter, based on the sword he carried, but the other held only a large shield. Fortunately, I didn't need to stand around guessing what that meant. I had Identify.
Goblin Guard, Level 3. Vitality, 40. Strength, 20. Magic, 10. Spirit, 10. Agility, 10. Skills, Vitality Boost, Low.
The goblin guard had a touch more health than the goblin fighter and, to go with it, a low vitality boost skill. But I figured that, as long as I could avoid letting my attacks bounce off that shield, this battle was mine. I watched the two goblins from the shadows of the high grass, deciding which to take first. At a glance, it looked like the sword-wielding goblin fighter was the better option. But if my first attack failed, or the goblins noticed me coming, that shield-carrying guard would be a problem while I took on the fighter. Though I suspected I could have overwhelmed the two goblins by force, I wasn't used to battling monsters. I wanted to be certain of my attack plan, so I decided to start with the guard. I waited for the goblins to separate and put a little distance between themselves. Now, I dove out of hiding while the guard faced the other way, but its reflexes were sharp. It sensed me coming and turned with its shield at the ready. Greed was already flying through the air. My sword was going to bounce off the goblin's shield. Or so I thought. The guard let out a scream as the black sword carved through goblin and shield as if through paper. It seemed Greed was far sharper than he appeared. If that was the case, these goblins had no chance of stopping my attacks.
Gluttony skill activated. Stats increased, vitality plus 40, strength plus 20, magic plus 10, spirit plus 10, agility plus 10. Skill added, vitality boost, low.
The metallic voice rang in my head as I dashed toward the remaining goblin. It had noticed me, of course, and now waved its sword menacingly. I kept a close eye on it as I paused to ask Greed something. "Hey, Greed," I said.
Hey, what?
"If you're so sharp, why were you being sold for practically nothing?"
It's simple. I choose who wields me.
"Does that mean you've accepted I have the right to handle you?"
Shut it.
Greed's voice was sulky, but his blade glowed with a keen light. His words were often spiteful, but in his own way, Greed had taken to me. I intended to live up to his expectations. The goblin fighter swung its sword wildly in an attempt to intimidate me, but it made no difference. I cut both it and its sword clean in half and watched as the goblin fell, its eyes rolling back into its head.
Gluttony skill activated. Stats increased, vitality plus 30, strength plus 40, magic plus 10, spirit plus 10, agility plus 30.
I didn't acquire any skills. It seemed I couldn't stack skills I already owned. If I wanted new powers, I would have to hunt different monsters. But even the stats alone were delicious enough. I hunted a further 25 goblin fighters and 10 goblin guards, until my bag was almost full of goblin ears. Then I checked my current stats with Identify.
Fake Graphite, level 1. Vitality, 1371. Strength, 1451. Magic, 481. Spirit, 481. Agility, 1051. Skills, Gluttony, Identify, Telepathy, Strength boost, low, Vitality boost, low.
My vitality, strength, and agility stats had all reached 4 digits, though my magic and spirit stats lagged, because my enemies were also lacking there. It was almost impossible to believe that, just yesterday, all my stats had all been a single digit, 1. One thing bothered me, though, my level. I'd defeated enough enemies to earn the spheres required for a level up. But something was weird, my level hadn't changed at all. Greed chuckled at my confusion.
It's an effect of your gluttony. Those whose skills violate the natural order of the gods cannot receive the blessings of spheres.
Violate the natural order of the gods? What do you mean?
That's what you're doing. The act of devouring the stats and skills of your enemies through the death is the rejection of the natural order and the very concept of levels. There are no blessings for such people. Your stats were meant to be all ones, and...
Greed paused. Something was on his mind.
No, it's nothing. It's almost lunch. Shouldn't we be getting back to the kingdom?
I was curious and wanted him to continue, but also he was right, I was getting hungry, in the more traditional sense. It was time to finish up and head back to Seafort. My stats had broken 4 digits, and that was enough for today. Also, I didn't know exactly why, but the goblins had started getting desperate, near vicious, in their attacks. I worried it wasn't safe to push them further. In any case, with my new stats, I could continue on my next hunt, perhaps as far as the forest, to hunt hobgoblins. They were a rank up from ordinary goblins, so they'd fill me up even more. In high spirits, I began the walk back to the kingdom of Seafort.